Okay, now that we've come back to the business model mapping layer, I will demonstrate to you how you can rename an object manually. And in this case, I will use the calendar quarter of year description to rename. You can either right click on it and locate the rename. Then when you locate the rename, it's going to make that column name active, and then you can rename it to whatever you want. You can always rename it to calendar quarter of year description without the underscores and in all lowercase. This is the first and manual method of renaming it. Now imagine if you had to use this method in a table that has got multiple columns. Let's just say this table had 100 columns. That wouldn't be an ideal way of doing it. But then there's a second way which uses the rename wizard. So we'll go ahead again and maybe click on the parent table if we wanted to rename all objects, and then click the rename wizard. Then once the rename wizard comes up, we select the rules that we want to use. We can say all text should be uppercase, then you add it and you click next. Or if you chose that inadvertently, you can select it and remove it. Then if you wanted to say, okay, we wanted all the text to be lowercase, we can select that option and then add it, and then we click next. You will notice that on the finish window, it gives you a preview of what the table names will look like if you want it. So we'll go ahead and click finish. Right, this is what happens. It renames the table all to lowercase according to the rules that you applied in the rename wizard. Now to get it back to what it was, you can go ahead and rename it manually like I showed you, which is by right clicking and selecting rename, which is really a manual method, not really recommended. Or you can go ahead and right click on it and choose rename wizard, and then choose all text uppercase, and then add, and then next, and click finish. You will notice that everything has been renamed to uppercase, but we wanted to make all the naming conventions consistent across all the different tables. So we will demonstrate the manual method of renaming it so that the first letter is uppercase and the rest lowercase, following the right naming convention. So I'm sorry. So go ahead and choose rename. Let me just remove the parts, time, underscore dim. What if I wanted to rename more than one object at the same time, and I wanted to use the rename wizard to name the different objects in the business model mapping layer? Another way that I can achieve that objective is to click on Tools, Utilities, and then choose the rename wizard, and then choose Execute. Once you get to Execute, you will see a blank presentation page, because that's not where we want to apply the renaming, because at this point we're still building the business model mapping layer. So we will change the tab to business model mapping, select that, and then you add all hierarchies. Once you add all hierarchies, then you click next. And at this point, this allows you to choose which items do you want to rename. Do you want to rename the columns only? Do you want to rename the table source, logical table sources? Do you want to rename the folders? If we wanted to rename everything, all we would simply do is just click next. And that brings us to this window again, where you can choose the rules that you want to apply. Either you want to make all the items or text uppercase, or text lowercase, first letter capital, first letter of each word capital, or you wanted to insert a space before the first uppercase letter, unless on the first position or there is a space already. Change each occurrence of underscore into a space, and then finally change specified text. So you can choose that by searching for text by typing it in here and then replacing it with a different value. That's kind of how you can achieve that objective. So go ahead and click back And we just said, okay, we just wanted to rename all the columns only, but leave the rest of these items as they are. So we will uncheck all these different checkboxes, click next, and then we wanted to apply the rule that says all text lowercase and first letter of each word capital. All text lowercase and first letter of each word capital. So we add them, and then we click next. You will notice that all the text was previously in uppercase, and we've renamed them in such a way that the first letter is capital letter and then the remaining lowercase, and we'll click finish. So if you expand any of these tables, you will notice a difference from what they previously were. So this is kind of how you can apply the renaming rules of the business model and mapping layer. Now, to ensure that all the rules that we've applied in the business model and mapping layer did not spill over to the physical layer, we'll go to the physical layer, expand the time dimension table, and you will see a difference in the naming of the columns in this physical table compared to what they are in the business model and mapping layer. So this rule that you applied, or these rules that you applied in the business model and mapping layer, are only restricted to that layer. They do not necessarily spill over to the physical layer. Now, assuming that you wanted to get rid of some of the columns in the business model which you were not interested in or you did not find any use for, you can simply delete it without impacting the mapping in the physical layer. So what we do is we just show you, though we're not going to necessarily delete a column, just how you can achieve that object. You can go ahead and click name, then right click and select delete. This action will delete the name column from the fact table, and we will remain with one column less from what is physically mapped in the physical layer. To achieve the same objective, you can, assuming that you wanted this time to delete two tables, you would simply click on that one table, hold your control key down and select another column, the logon column, and then you can go to edit and then select delete. Or if you wanted to duplicate the columns, you can also click duplicate. Then these columns will be created twice within the same business model and mapping layer. Let's go ahead and now create a simple measure. Double click on dollars, and when you are on the aggregation tab, you want to click the down arrow, select sum, click OK. You will notice that the column icon has changed to orange. This demonstrates to you that you've applied some kind of business logic, which in this case is summing or the dollar amount. And we can do the same thing for units. Double click on it. On the aggregation tab, click the down arrow, select sum, and click OK. This is how you create simple measures in the fact table if you wanted to aggregate all the different values that are held in that column. Now, a short word about measures. Measures are typically data that is additive, the data that you can easily add up together to come up with some meaningful conclusion. Totals, quantities are examples of measures. The fact table contains the measures in your business model. Measures are only held in a fact table, so it's very important to recognize and identify the fact table earlier on as you build. This is a very simple demonstration of what a repository would look like. In more complex scenarios, you have hundreds of tables, and that is where this icon that is different from the rest of the tables comes in handy in helping you identify exactly which table carries additive values. So at this point, we'll click the save. And do you wish to check global consistency? We have not completely built the repository, and we do not wish to check global consistency at this point. So click no.